Hello. Join me under the car. I would like to take a look at something that I've been testing. So Strange Engineering came out with their own high resolution driveshaft speed sensor setup. And no, that's not their trigger wheel. That's a Mad Racing wheel that I've got on there right this second. But that's their sensor. You can see it says Strange. All right. Why are we talking about this? What's different? What we got going on? So, Strange, okay, so the standard in driveshaft speed aftermarket pickups has been 2, 4, or 8 magnets. Now we're starting to see a lot more companies come out with different tooth reluctors in order to improve driveshaft speed resolution. This is Strange's actual gear that's supposed to go on there. This guy. I've got it off because it's going on to a different center section soon. And I had a 32 tooth, so I just put that on the car for now. So this one's got a lot more teeth. This one works really, really, really well. That one reads a little bit slower, so not quite as nice, but it does work. But the reason why I'm doing this is that's a 389 gear set, and I've got a 370 gear set that this is going to go on to. So we're going to see less revolutions per one turn of the tire, so the higher tooth count will help on the lower gear set. Makes sense? So, but once I get a second one of these, then I will have one on both as soon as I get one, as soon as I get a hold of one. So why even improve reluctor count? I'm gonna get over here on my whiteboard. It's from a previous video, this red hoop-to-hoop line. Okay, so why would you want more drive shaft speed resolution? Because if you have a drive shaft speed sensor now, it probably looks something like this. You probably have, nothing. This is our baselines before we launch. Then you launch, and then you get about, half a second in. Then, you're at 1 second in, and you're, 1.5. And then so on and so forth for the rest of your run. If you're on a good run, looks like this. If you're on a not so good run, then it probably leaves, bounces, hops, does something like that. Okay. What if you could catch that sooner? How would you do that? So you would do that by a higher reluctor count on your driveshaft speed sensor. So instead of taking 8 pulses here, and hopefully your data is clean enough that you're not having to average any pulses, your P route, if you're running a Holly, you increase that number. Hopefully you're able to, see at least this quick. If you're averaging any pulses because you've got a noisy driveshaft sensor pickup, then you're really shooting yourself in the foot, and you won't even see this hoop. You'll feel it. You'll see it in video. You'll see the car bounce, oscillate, smack the tire. Your 60 foot's going to kind of suck, but you won't see this spin. It'll show up a little differently. It'll be like, it'll kind of look like that. It'll be way out here, but it'll be really smoothed over because you've got all those pulses averaged, and you can't actually see the acceleration rate of the drive shaft because your tire's slipping and deforming and changing heights and everything else. This is, by the way, this is information for a slick. This isn't for a radial. Radial's a little different ballgame. Okay, so what happens if you have this exact same pass that was smooth, but now you have a higher tooth count reluctor because you got like one of these Strange setups? Well, what you're going to see is you're going to see this pick up much sooner. I'm trying to do this by hand, so it may not be emphasizing what I'm trying to draw here. But basically, you still got a slight arc as everything kind of speeds up to start moving. And then it'll plot a true drive shaft speed arc. So this is all happening, quarter second in the run. First 2.5 tenths. If this was a spin, you're able to see it in as soon as 1.8 tenths is what we've been able to measure it down to now. So if we leave and we see the drive shaft starting to go up here a little too soon, we know that we've overcrushed a tire or we've started to get a slip situation. And I mean, yeah, if you strike the tire on the hit, if you really misjudge and you had a ton of RPM in the leave and a ton of boost all stacked up, yeah, you'll see this thing, take off way sooner, But if you got an averaged, 8 magnet or 8 pickup tone ring, you're not going to see that. You're going to see this still. You're going to see that with the loopy-loop oscillation to it. So basically, what I'm trying to get at here is, especially your starting line tune-up is only going to be as good as the information you got. There's a lot that goes into getting your vehicle to repeatably leave the same. If you watched our TED Talk on VLS the other week when we kind of talked times and ET, you could see that every single pass I made, I improved in the 60 foot. I also improved in overall ET, and I improved in overall mile per hour every run. And that is because of data and data interpretation. That all starts with making sure the data you have is reliable. So, if you go out there and your drive shaft speed data looks like this, and don't laugh because I know some of your guys' stuff does. I've seen it. Yeah, if it's jumping all over the place and you have to do a ton of averaging, a ton of smoothing just to be able to see the arc that this is actually going to kind of figure out what direction your vehicle is trending, or if you have any sensors or data like that, you need to get it fixed up. You need to figure out what's wrong. If it's noise, if it's a connection issue, if it's a bad sensor, if you are trying to pick up, if you're trying to use a rotor as a shutter wheel and it's got uneven spacing, if you're trying to use the back of Allen head bolts as your pickups, because you're picking up one side of the bolt, small gap, other side of the bolt, large gap, small gap, so on and so forth, your data is going to look like this. It's going to be all over the place. It's not going to make any sense. You won't be able to go in and see trends of when you're losing the tire on a drive shaft sensor data. If this is your shock sensor information, you're not able to see the bumps on the surface, so you're barely even getting to use your shock sensor for anything. Pressure data, if you're not running one of the pressure dampening, let me go back. Had this on a car yesterday. Gentleman had a sensor block for his back pressure gauge on his turbo system, and the sensor block looked nice, but it didn't have enough volume or dampening area in it like what Blaine Hill makes for back pressure dampening, so that you get a true or a better reading of what your back pressure truly is in between the combustion process pulses, because your data will look like this if you just have a sensor tied to a copper line tied into your pre-turbo hot side. But when you put a dampening device on there, this stuff will get way smaller. You'll actually be able to see this without having to add any filtering or smoothing to your logging. It's all good information to have. If you took the time to put a sensor in it, use the data, use the information. Same thing with like cooling system pressure information. If you got your sensor in a crappy spot or your sensor pickup, if it's like in an air pocket of your radiator and you're trying to read cooling system pressure data off of that, I recommend moving the sensor for one, but two, adding a dampening pod isn't a bad way to clean up the data on that. You'll still see the trend when the head gaskets start to let go on your LS, or as your MLS gaskets start to fatigue, or your copper gaskets begin to relax a little bit. You'll still be able to see it, but it'll be a little easier to spot. You can actually use a high limit number, like let's say at 22 pounds of cooling system pressure, please retard timing 6 degrees. I mean, I guess we don't ask please the Holley or any other system you're using, you just tell it and it's gonna do it, hopefully. Hopefully it's set up right. Data resolution is very, very important. That's why the world has gotten so fast, especially, in this last decade. You look a decade ago where we were versus where we are. I mean, I remember 6-7 years ago, if I was able to go 580s on a 29.5 10.5 in no prep small tire, I mean, I was going rounds. I mean, I might luck my way to semis, something like that, but I was going very, very far. And now the world is full of 530 and quicker cars. That's why Little Gangsters is so popular right now. There's a lot of cars that can get down that 40 to 30 range, and some of them top out right about there. Some of them have just enough to squeak past that and break out and go low 5s. And then there's several dozen people that can go in the 4s, and some of them very, very deep in the 4s. All that's made possible from data accumulation. Whether or not even if you got old school carbureted, small block, carbureted, nitrous setup, not limited to small block. I mean, it could be anything. It could be big block, it could be mountain motor, whatever you have. To go faster, you are relying on newer technology. You're not out there just twisting 2 wires together on a button to spray the kit. You're not relying on zero plotting on the rear of the car for your 4-link settings or your ladder bar stuff. You can get there, but it's just a lot of testing. A lot of the information you use today to, make a car go fast was either, developed using data and sensors that have reliable feedback and reliable repeatability. And that information still trickles down to every facet of racing today. Like I said, even if your car doesn't have it, the parts designed on your car were designed, the parts on your car were designed using that information. Ain't no secret. World's getting faster all the time. Things are improving all the time. It's important to take the tools that we have and make the most of them. So that's where, even something simple, increasing tooth count reliably to where that Hall effect sensor can read the driveshaft speed even quicker, just like Strange's setup. That gets us more information. That helps us to see trends or issues sooner in your driveshaft line to where you can make adjustments. You take those moves, you take those trends, you take those differences from one round to the other, instead of scratching your head going, man, it went a 127 60 foot here and then it went a 134. What happened? Well, maybe you got a front strut on the car that locked up when you hit some of these potholes in the shutdown or on the return road, and only one side of the vehicle started to lift up, the other side was held down from that locked up strut, and that's what caused your driveshaft speed to go up sooner. But you couldn't see that because you had either no driveshaft sensor, you had a crappy working driveshaft speed sensor, and your front shock sensor had a whole bunch of noise in it, or your front laser didn't work for whatever reason this time, and you weren't able to see that. So data is going to always help you figure out what you can do to improve your program. Even if you don't even know it, even if you are like, I don't even know what to do with this, You know, if you hire somebody, if you like hire me or another tuner out there, and you're like, hey, this is what it's been doing, you know, can you take a look at it? If you don't know what the data does, but the tuner can, he's gonna be able to guide you a lot, or he's gonna be able to safely guide you down a better path to help improve your program. And even if you forgot about some of the sensors you had on the vehicle, but as long as they were working right, it's nice to be able to, if you have an issue down the road, it's nice to be able to go back and look at something going on. It's like logging oil pressure, you know. Once you're comfortable with the motor on oil pressure, you don't usually go back and look at it. But if you had a thrust bearing issue and you hadn't looked at your oil pressure in the last 8 runs, you go back and start looking at your last 8 runs, maybe you'll see a trend there. You know, maybe you'll see some oscillations in the oil pressure, but you know your oil pressure sensor is good. Well, maybe it was because the crankshaft's getting pushed so hard that it was starting to open up the front clearance on the thrust bearing and letting out excess oil. And now your system pressure goes down. Sometimes you can catch things like that before it happens, especially if you know you might have an issue and you want to generate a trend line. Can't do that with bad sensor data, but you can if you have enough proper working sensors. There's a lot of things that you can learn about your program and a lot of issues that even if you didn't catch them coming, if you go back and start recognizing their telltale signs before it happened, you can catch it faster. So just like wheel slip, you know, a lot of your, especially your small tire stuff, limited traction situations, small tire stuff. I mean, drive shaft speed's like the most important sensor on the car in a lot of ways in that stuff. But to put one sensor in front of others, it's kind of hard because there's a lot of critical sensors. You know, like I feel like G meter is very imperative. I feel like front wheel speed is very imperative. I feel like drive shaft speed is very imperative. I feel that if you got a turbo car, your boost control and dome sensor are extremely important because obviously they are. I mean, obviously, like your wideband is important, your map sensor data is important. One of the least important sensors to me, honestly, is probably going to go back to oil pressure. It's either got it or it doesn't. You know, it's racing. Stuff happens. Bearings may stick. Things may fail. But that's why we have diapers. That's why we have belly pans. That's why we have proper fluid containment systems. So that when stuff fails, we can safely stop the vehicle without ruining the event for everybody else. And, you know, live to race in their day. So anytime you get a chance to improve your data, do it. Anytime you get a chance to add more data, do it. This is coming from a guy that I am out of negative outputs on my Dominator, and I'm out of most of my inputs. I think I got like 3 inputs left that I can use. And I got 6 or 7 sensors I want to add. So I'm gonna have to add a CAN module in order to run additional stuff. But why not? Like I said, you know, data's king. It's powerful. All right, that's it. See y'all later.